So, a flash talk is a concentrated talk in a very brief time that is going to give you a huge idea, perhaps inspire you. It is done by a thought leader who is shaking things up, disrupting the norm. Elizabeth Riordan, good morning, thought leader. Come up here on stage. As you walk on the stage, the crowd will applaud. Very impressive. Liz, on your business card, what does it say?
Ooh, Divisional Vice President, Global Dairy Operations.
All right, very interesting. What you're about to tell us takes us into dairy, sustainability, and India.
Exactly, all three of those.
You have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you
Enjoy.
so much. All right. So thank you so much to the council for allowing me to come back and really to continue a conversation that one of my colleagues started about 2 years ago on the subject of a shared value program that we're running in the dairy community in India. But before I go down that path, I want to just have you think about putting yourselves in the shoes of some of our constituents. So if you're a dairy farmer in India, you're more than likely female because over 50% of the work on most dairy farms is performed by the woman of the household. You're probably taking care of 2 to 3 animals, and you're also taking care of your family. And the milk that you get from those animals is a key source of income for your family. However, the income that you're getting is probably not very commensurate with the amount of investment that you're putting in. In other words, you're putting in a lot of hard work and you're really not getting much back for it. And the reason for that is manifold. Could be training, could be access to resources, a whole variety of things. So it's a real challenge for the smallholder dairy farmer. At the same time, I want to put you in the shoes of Abbott. In 2014, we opened a nutritional manufacturing facility in the state of Gujarat. And that facility produces Ensure and Pediasure, some of our globally known brands. And we located in India to service India. And we knew with 70 million Indian households in dairy that there was a very large supply of dairy there. But we found out very quickly that a consistent supply of high quality dairy was going to be a big challenge for us. And so in 2015, we kicked off a shared value piece of work around this concept we're calling the Dairy Demonstration Effect Project. And this piece of work was between ourselves, Probat, who's our dairy processor, as well as TechnoServe. I'm sure many of you know them, an NGO obviously that brings business solutions to areas of poverty. And the premise of this shared value program was to really solve a couple of different problems. To solve the problem Abbott had in getting a stream of high quality milk, and to solve the problem that our smallholder farmers have in this income stream that really wasn't very dependable. And so this program had 2 key components. The first key component of this program was that we engaged around 1,500 dairy farmers, half women, half men roughly, in a pretty comprehensive training and outreach program. We trained them on how to create clean milk, simple things like keeping their vessels clean, cleaning the udders on the animals before they were milking, simple things like that. Then we moved on to more complex but very important topics around veterinary care, as well as how to pick the right fodder. So whether they were growing fodder, how to pick the right seeds, or whether they were buying nutritional supplements, how to pick the right nutritional supplements. And then finally, some key financial practices. How do you use that money? How do you invest that money if you get a little extra, right? And some just basic dairy farming topics. So this was the first part around more behavior and culture. Then the second thing we did is we invested in some infrastructure, 10 bulk milk chilling centers in the communities. And they were very close by so that the farmers could walk there, maybe ride their bike twice a day because animals are milked twice a day. And one of the big challenges we do have is that sometimes farmers only take milk once a day. If milk sits for 12 hours, it doesn't end up to be high quality by the time it gets there, right? So we wanted these facilities in the communities where they're located. The second thing we did is we were very focused on fair and transparent payment. I heard one of the other speakers today talk about some of the middlemen in the dairy industry, or in the ag industry in general in many countries, and dairy in India is no different. And so what we find is that there's more than a few opportunities for dairy farmers to not be paid for the real quality that they bring in. And so we are very clear with the transparency of the fat and protein in their product, and we pay them appropriately for that. But there's an accountability factor as well. With the training and education and the close proximity to the bulk milk chilling centers, there's also an accountability. If the milk comes in and it's adulterated, so maybe it has antibiotics in it, or in some other way it's contaminated, we reject it. So the farmers are absolutely paid fairly, but they also know that there's an accountability, there's a two-way street here. And so we started this process a couple of years ago, and there started to be a great buzz around it. And the amount of milk that we were getting it started to increase and increase. And today, those first 10 centers, 7 of them have had to be doubled in size because the milk is really flowing. But you always wonder, is this really working, right? Is this shared value concept coming together? So I want to tell you a little story, something that happened last spring. In the spring in India, the monsoon rains come. The monsoon rains came, and they kept coming, and they kept coming in the area where these are located. And much of the fodder in the field started to mold. And when the mold comes and you feed that fodder to an animal, it creates a toxin that ends up in the milk. And then the milk gets rejected. And many of the milk collection centers, not ours, but in the region, were rejecting a lot of milk, and farmers were really struggling. They had no income because their milk was being rejected. What we found is that at our centers, where the farmers had been trained about how to make sure that their fodder, first of all, they'd chosen the right seeds and they had the right fodder, but their fodder was not molding, their milk wasn't being rejected. And so shared value really happened here. The farmers made income all throughout the summer when some of their neighboring farmers had no income. And secondly, we had, and our supplier Abbott, who also provides to a lot of other companies, had a consistent supply of high quality milk. So truly a win-win situation for these farmers that were associated with these centers. But you might say, okay, that's a great story. Tell me a little bit more. And so TechnoServe helped us to put together the data around these facilities. Our farmers that have been activated through these facilities are producing twice as much milk. More importantly, they're gaining more than twice as much income. But the key statistic, I feel, is that it's with the same amount of input money. So their revenues have grown substantially. And you might say, well, Liz, how can that happen? How can they put the same amount of money in that they were putting in before, but they're getting more in return? Well, it happens because now they're using the right veterinary care at the right time and the right amounts of that care. They're choosing the right fodder and they're choosing the right nutritional supplements and feeding their animals at the right time to assure that they don't dry off too early, right? That they're getting the most benefit out of the investment that they're putting in. And so this has now really created a buzz in the community. And as a result, our partner is now building 100 of these bulk milk chilling centers. And we are helping to mentor our partner as they build these, because it's really not about the centers. It's really not about the infrastructure. It's about the culture and the behaviors that are attached to these centers, right? And to be fair, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of milk collection facilities in India. But if you don't have the right behavior to pay fairly, and if you don't have the right behavior to pay transparently, and if we can't create a culture that says we will be there for you, then that doesn't create the loyalty that is needed to be successful. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the linkage to women, because like I said at the beginning, over 50% of the work on a dairy farm in India happens with the females in the group. And we found very early on, I heard, listen to the farmers, right? We found very early on that our training sessions weren't getting to everyone that we needed to get to, the women, right? And so we hired facilitators and trainers that were female. And we made a very important push to assure that we were attracting all of the female farmers to the training session so that they could feel comfortable in a learning environment, and they could ask questions and really become part of the decision-making in their family. And the women are now telling us that they're taking quite a bit of responsibility for the decision-making around dairy farming in their family, and why wouldn't they? They're now making twice the income, right? And they're able to maybe buy another cow in their family, or maybe they're investing in a pump for their well, or they're putting their child in a different school. All of these things to enhance the vibrancy of their family and their environment and their community. So I hope you see from this quick little flash talk that there's some real opportunities here in shared value, right? Our supplier, Prabat, as well as ourselves, has a more consistent supply of high quality milk. As, or more importantly, our farmers that are engaged in this program have been extremely successful, and they're able to increase the benefits to their community and reinvest in their businesses, and that's really, really exciting. This is just one way that Abbott is providing sustainability in the communities in which we work. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to share this tidbit about Abbott with you today. Thank you.